Hello everyone, immortanG here, and welcome to my first impressions video, Call of the Wild, theAngler. Now, theAngler is a first-person, open-world fishing simulation game developed by Expansive Worlds, the folks behind The Hunter, Call of the Wild. The game just had its official release on August 31st, after only being announced a few months ago back in June of 2022. In this game, you'll explore the Golden Ridge Reserve, which is a 25 square mile map loosely based on Yellowstone National Park in the state of Wyoming. The map consists of multiple rivers, lakes, and ponds that offer a variety of locations to find 12 different species of fish included in the game at launch. You'll start the game off creating a character with a few basic options, then proceed with a series of tutorials to learn the basic fishing mechanics in the game and meet the only 2 NPCs in the world. Through these NPCs, you'll have access to the in-game tackle shop,
Hey, it's me, the shopkeeper with the great deals,
and perform a variety of missions. There are also job boards posted at various outposts throughout the map that offer additional optional missions you can take on. Typically, these are related to catching certain fish at certain locations. Thus, through catching fish, completing missions, and exploring undiscovered outposts and towers, you earn experience and credits. With said credits, you can then buy upgraded tackle, clothes for your character, and skins for your Jeep and boat. Furthermore, as you use the various rods, reels, and tackle, they have their own leveling bar, which in turn gives you additional experience points when filled. The vehicles are free to summon and use at various outposts and docks located throughout the map. The game currently also has multiplayer for up to 12 other anglers, and you are automatically filled into the multiplayer map with random players if you don't have 12 friends, which does help liven up the world a bit. Okay, now we're going to get into it a little bit. So after 20 hours of play since its launch, my feelings on Call of the Wild theAngler are very much mixed. Now, coming from the same developers behind The Hunter, I knew they were capable of building an immersive open world environment, which for the most part they have succeeded with in theAngler. The environments look and sound the part and do bring that open world feel I was hoping for, as I noted in my pre-release video, Why the Hype. Now, a few other positives. The missions. I always find it more interesting to have purpose in these types of games to help drive you outside of just fishing for the fun of it. The missions so far that I've encountered have been decent enough to keep me occupied and also help encourage a bit of exploration on this large map. Next is the ability to see fish living in the world. At times I think you can see them a little too well at too far of a distance, and so it can be a little like shooting fish in a barrel, but overall I like the base idea that they are out there in the world, ready to be found, and I can pinpoint their location if close enough. And one more positive that is certainly important are that the fish fights themselves have been fun. Now, to clarify, this is just the act of reeling the fish in. Even if your gear is a little undersized, it is possible to bring in bigger fish, but it can be tough for sure and requires finesse with using the drag. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't include the mechanics before or after the fish is already on. And that leads me to one of my main issues I am most let down by: the actual fishing mechanics in the game outside of just reeling one in. I feel, and many others in the community I'm sure, had expectations of this game being similar to The Hunter, and that it leans towards an arcadey aspect but still grounded in some simulation basics. Now, to be honest, at the very least, I was expecting fishing mechanics on par with what I've experienced in other popular fishing games, such as the 7-year-old game Fishing Planet at a minimum. Now, to be clear, I wasn't expecting the gameplay depth to be similar to those games, but at least the base fishing mechanics to be on par. Instead, we have overly stiff reeling rods, an inability to move while the rod is cast, inability to pinpoint a cast location, lures that don't behave correctly, i.e. topwater lures don't float, let alone any of the lure types showing the action they should in the water as you reel them in. A first-person camera that jerks along with the rod as you try to do a twitch or jig presentation, making you motion sick in the process. Additionally, performing presentations is linked to physical mouse movement, having me questioning why it isn't mapped to the right mouse button like other successful fun fishing games. And I do find it to get annoying pretty quick. And that is just one of a few intuitive things present in older existing successful fishing games Expansive Worlds neglects to do in theAngler. Maybe they're attempting to reinvent the wheel to be different, but frankly there's no reinventing needed, and should have just stuck to what is proven to work with these other successful games. Now, this is not to mention the much hated strike animation. How that made it into the release without at least a toggle boggles my mind and was a huge misjudgment. You know, such a misjudgment, the developers have already responded to it and will be making some changes to that in future updates. Now, you thought that was it? Sadly, it's not. Now, there are additional game mechanic issues, such as it being too easy and quick to make credits and get to the top level gear way too fast. In my experience, within the first 12 to 15 hours, I had enough credits to buy all the best rods, reels, and lures. Additionally, there are missing features that probably should have been in at launch, and I covered those actually in my missing features video, which I released prior to the game coming out. Now, all the points I made in that video were accurate and were included in the game at launch. And of course, there are some other graphical issues like water graphics just not being that good, especially for a game based on fishing where you're on the water all the time. Now, all these issues I just listed off just go to show how unpolished of a game this is. And I'm not even including the general bugs and glitches and technical issues people experience, which usually happens when a game first launches. Oh, and I almost forgot, and I cannot continue without mentioning, why in the world, with the empirical units, are they using yards to measure fish length, for Christ's sake? That is not a thing anyone does in the world, and it's just another example of the lack of awareness when it comes to some of the decisions in this. Now, a quick note on this, they actually hotfixed this with the first patch. However, they just changed it to feet, and it's still not in inches, which is what people in the United States use when they measure and talk about fish. So to summarize, certainly my list of positives is way less than my list of negatives, unfortunately. If any game should have came out under early access, I think Call of the Wild theAngler is a shining example and a case study of that. Doing as such would have alleviated much of the backlash, pun intended, that I've seen run through the community, as us gamers would have understood more development was on the way. And this comes with having the peace of mind that the mechanics I mentioned earlier would be actively worked on and tweaked, which when it fully releases, you don't expect gameplay mechanics to be overhauled too much. Additionally, free updates would be coming down the line to fix issues and add missing content, which usually typically happens in early access, and we still would have gladly paid that $30 to do so. Instead, they decided to do a full release, which I can only speculate was to get it out to broader audience via the other digital outlets such as the Epic and the Microsoft Store, outside of just Steam. Unfortunately for them, many of us PC gamers are so used to many small games going into early access period. Thus, if you're already stating the game is ready for a regular release, our mindset is we expect to receive a completed game, which in my opinion, theAngler is not. It is important to note that the developers have been promising even before release that they were going to take in all the feedback, continue to fix issues, and evolve the game for some considerable time into the future, which in my view is exactly what early access designation is for. But since it's a released game, this begs the question, at what additional cost will that come to us? Will there be free updates, or will these mechanics and features that should have been in at launch be tied to paid DLC? Well, time will tell. And I just want to note, as I was creating this video, they did drop their first hotfix, addressing a few critical tech issues and bugs people were running into. And you can also check out their website, which has a list of known issues. Now, before I end this first impressions video, I will leave on a positive note. I will say I have personally found enjoyment in the exploration of the world, the missions, and the fish fights to keep continuing to play for the time being, even though I do yearn for a more simulator-like experience. Just something about exploring the large map, finding a new water source or interesting spot, and reeling in a few fish before moving on, I found to be quite addicting. And I will continue at the very least to monitor updates and let you know about them and any other major changes in future videos. Now, as far as recommending this game in its current state, well, I really can't make that decision for you. Your tolerance to issues, expectations, and patience for future patches may greatly vary from mine. But if exploring beautiful environments is your jam and you are okay dealing with imperfect fishing experience, you might want to check it out still. On the other hand, if dealing with, and I'm categorizing this as an early access game in my mind, is not your jam, then avoid this title for the time being. So if you made it this far into the video, a big thank you for sticking with it, and let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts on theAngler are, and if you plan to purchase it if you haven't already, or if you're going to avoid it altogether. And after you're done doing that, please go check out one of my other most recent videos up in the right hand corner, and I have links to my socials down below. And until next time, good fishing.